The detection arrays of the Galactic Council flickered with unusual readings. Something was happening in the Outer Rim territories, and nobody knew what to make of it. A new species had appeared seemingly overnight, spreading across star systems like wildfire. The strange part was not their speed or their numbers. The strange part was their complete silence. Ambassador Veldar stood in the observation deck of his flagship, staring at the data streams flowing across his neural interface. The Kentari had been monitoring galactic activities for over 6,000 years. They prided themselves on knowing everything that happened within Council space. But, this new species called humans had appeared without warning, without introduction, and without following any of the established protocols for first contact. Veldar had tried everything. He sent diplomatic packages through quantum channels. He broadcast welcome messages on all standard frequencies. He even dispatched envoy ships to human-controlled systems, carrying gifts and cultural exchange offers. Every single attempt received the same response. The humans acknowledged the message, thanked him politely, and, then, declined to engage further. The first direct contact happened near a cluster of rocky planets humans were surveying. Veldar's science team had tracked a human colony ship making slow, deliberate movements through the asteroid fields. The ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of a standard council vessel, and it bristled with construction equipment rather than weapons. When Veldar finally managed to establish a live communication link, he expected answers. What he got instead was Captain Day 1. The human appeared on screen with grease on his hands and a distracted expression on his face. Behind him, Veldar could see crew members rushing back and forth, carrying equipment and shouting instructions to each other. The noise was overwhelming. Veldar had to increase his audio filters just to hear himself speak. "Greetings, Captain Day 1, Veldar began, using his most formal diplomatic tone. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to the greater community of sentient species. We have much to discuss regarding territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and cultural exchange protocols." Day 1 looked up from whatever he was working on and nodded. "Yeah, thanks for that. Listen, we're kind of in the middle of something right now. Can we talk about this later?" Veldar felt his diplomatic training crumbling. In 6,000 years of Kentari history, no species had ever responded to first contact with such casual dismissal. "Captain, I must stress the importance of establishing formal diplomatic relations. There are procedures that must be followed, treaties that must be signed, and introductions that must be made." Sure, Day 1 said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "We get that. But, we're really busy right now. We've got 17 colonies that need prefabricated habitats, 6 mining operations that are behind schedule, and a hydroponics failure on New Sol that needs immediate attention. We'll definitely reach out when we're ready for the whole diplomacy thing." "When will that be?" Veldar asked, trying to keep the frustration out of his voice. Day 1 thought about it for a moment. "Probably 50 years or so. Maybe 60 if the terraforming takes longer than expected." The communication ended before Veldar could respond. He stood in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. 50 years? The humans expected the entire Galactic Council to wait 50 years for a conversation. The emergency session of the Council was chaotic. Representatives from 47 different species filled the Grand Chamber, all talking at once. The translation matrices struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices, creating a cacophony of confused languages and concerned questions. Veldar presented his report with as much dignity as he could manage, but he could see the disbelief in every face around him. "They refused?" Chancellor Mockstar of the Vrindian Collective asked. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme confusion. "They simply refused diplomatic contact." "Not exactly," Veldar explained. "They acknowledged our presence. They were polite. They just said they were busy and would talk to us later." How much later? 50 standard years. The chamber erupted. Species who had never raised their voices before were shouting. Ancient diplomatic protocols were being cited. Some representatives demanded immediate sanctions. Others wanted to send military vessels to enforce compliance with council regulations. The situation was spiraling out of control. Then, Dr. Hannah's message arrived. It came through official channels, properly formatted and respectful in tone. The human xenobiologist had taken the time to study council communication standards and followed them precisely. Her message was simple and clear, but it did nothing to calm the growing panic. She thanked the council for their interest in humanity. She explained that humans were currently in what they called a foundational period. They were building the infrastructure needed to support their growing population across multiple star systems. This required total focus and dedication from every available person. Diplomatic relations, while important, would have to wait until the essential construction was complete. She even provided a timeline with detailed milestones and progress reports. The council members read the message in stunned silence. The humans were not being hostile. They were not posturing or playing political games. They genuinely believed that building farms and cities was more important than talking to the most powerful political body in the galaxy. Veldar watched as his colleagues struggled to comprehend this alien mindset. For every species in the council, diplomacy came first. Always. You established relationships before you expanded. You negotiated boundaries before you claimed territory. You introduced yourself before you started building homes in someone else's neighborhood. The humans were breaking every unwritten rule of galactic civilization, and they did not seem to care. Over the following months, more reports came in. Human ships were spotted in hundreds of systems. They avoided areas already claimed by other species but showed no hesitation in colonizing unclaimed space. They set up automated trading posts that accepted standard galactic currency and offered food, raw materials, and manufactured goods. But, still, no human would agree to a face-to-face meeting. Veldar commissioned a study of human behavior patterns. His research team analyzed every interaction, every message, and every public broadcast coming from human space. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans were incredibly efficient. They worked in coordinated teams that accomplished in months what would take other species years. Their technology was not particularly advanced, but they used it in creative ways that maximized output. And, most importantly, they were completely focused on their goals. When a human decided to build something, they built it properly. No shortcuts, no compromises, and no distractions. The idea of stopping construction to attend diplomatic meetings seemed as absurd to them as asking a surgeon to pause mid-operation for a social call. The galaxy watched and waited, unable to understand and unwilling to accept. Humanity continued to expand, system by system, colony by colony, completely unconcerned with the growing anxiety their silence was creating across the stars. 20 years had passed since humanity first appeared on the galactic stage, and the situation had only grown more complicated. The Galactic Council chambers felt different now. There was a tension in the air that had not existed before, a nervous energy that made even the most experienced diplomats uncomfortable. Humanity now occupied 847 star systems, each one meticulously developed with the kind of thoroughness that made other species uncomfortable. Ambassador Veldar had spent 2 decades trying to understand humanity, and he still felt like he was missing something fundamental. The humans had not attacked anyone. They had not made threats or demands. They simply continued to build and expand and refuse every diplomatic overture with the same polite but firm response. "We are busy. We will talk when we are ready." The automated trading stations humans established across the frontier had become incredibly popular. Other species quickly discovered that human agricultural products were of exceptional quality, their manufactured goods were reliable, and their prices were fair. But every trading station operated the same way. Place your order through the computer system, pay the listed price, and collect your goods. No bargaining, no personal interaction, and absolutely no diplomatic discussions. Ambassador Taesung became something of a legend among council diplomats. He was the only human who regularly appeared at council functions, but even he maintained strict boundaries. He attended virtual conferences, answered questions through video links, and participated in committee discussions from his office on Earth. But, when invited to state dinners, cultural festivals, or the traditional face-to-face summit meetings that were the backbone of galactic politics, he always declined. "I appreciate the invitation," he would say with what seemed like genuine regret. "But, our policy is clear. We will engage in formal diplomatic protocols once our infrastructure is established. Until then, I can answer questions and participate in virtual discussions, but I cannot commit to in-person meetings." The Drethix conglomerate was the first to lose patience. They were a militant species who valued strength and direct confrontation. The human refusal to engage looked like cowardice to them, and they decided to test humanity's resolve. They chose a system humanity had been surveying for months, moved in with a military outpost, and planted their flag. The human response came faster than anyone expected. Commodore Jean Wu arrived with a fleet of construction ships within 48 hours. The Drethix commanders prepared for a confrontation, weapons armed and shields raised. But the humans did not approach the Drethix outpost. They did not issue threats or demands. They simply flew to the other side of the system and started building their own colony. What happened next became required viewing at military academies across the galaxy. The humans worked with a speed and efficiency that seemed impossible. While the Drethix were still setting up their command center, the humans had already established 3 biodomes and a functioning spaceport. While the Drethix struggled with supply line issues, the humans were harvesting their first crops and producing their own building materials from local resources. Within 3 months, the human settlement looked like it had been there for years. Thriving farms, bustling residential areas, and industrial complexes that hummed with productive activity. The Drethix outpost, by comparison, looked like a temporary camp. Drethix soldiers watched in growing frustration as human children played in parks that had not existed a few weeks earlier while they struggled to get their food synthesizers working properly. The Drethix withdrew quietly, humiliated but unable to justify escalation. After all, the humans had not attacked them or violated any treaties. They had simply built a better colony faster. When council representatives asked Jean Wu if he wanted to comment on the incident, he seemed genuinely confused by the question. "Comment on what?" he asked. "We needed that system for agricultural development. The Drethix wanted it too. The system is big enough for both of us, so we each took what we needed. Is there a problem?" The problem, from the council's perspective, was that humans did not seem to understand the concept of political posturing. They did not recognize threats or respond to intimidation because they were too focused on their work to pay attention. This made them unpredictable and, in the eyes of many species, dangerous. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire through galactic networks. Some believed humans were a hive mind, all working toward a single unified goal. Others thought they were preparing for a massive invasion once their infrastructure was complete. The more paranoid species suggested that humans were an ancient war machine species that had gone dormant and was now reawakening. Commander Young he did not help matters during a rare video interview with the Galactic News Network. The reporter asked her directly about humanity's long-term intentions, clearly fishing for some kind of reassurance that would calm the growing fears. Young he looked at the camera with honest confusion. "Intentions? We are just building homes and farms. We are growing food, raising families, and creating places where our children can live safely. Why would we stop doing that to sit in meetings and talk about doing it? But the other species need to understand your goals, the reporter pressed. They need to know you are not a threat. A threat? Young He laughed, though there was no malice in it. We are farmers and engineers. We build things. If other species are threatened by construction projects, maybe they should examine why they feel that way. The interview went viral, and not in a good way. Species across the galaxy analyzed every word, looking for hidden meanings and veiled threats. The fact that Young He seemed to genuinely mean what she said only made things worse. How could an entire species be so focused on building that they did not care about politics? Veldar found himself in an impossible position. He had become the Council's primary expert on humanity, which meant he was constantly asked to explain behavior he did not fully understand himself. He spent his days reviewing reports of human activities, looking for patterns that might reveal their true intentions. What he found was boring. Humans built farms. They constructed housing. They established schools and hospitals and research facilities. They worked long hours, took pride in quality craftsmanship, and celebrated when projects finished on schedule. There were no secret military buildups, no hidden weapons facilities, and no evidence of conquest plans. But the Council could not accept that explanation. In their experience, every species had political ambitions. Everyone wanted power, influence, and status. The idea that humans simply wanted to build nice places to live seemed too simple, too innocent to be true. The final straw came when the Council passed a resolution demanding that humanity provide detailed reports on all construction activities, military capabilities, and expansion plans. The resolution passed with overwhelming support. Surely, the Council members thought, this would force the humans to engage properly. The human response was written by Dr. Hannah, the same xenobiologist who had sent the first message 20 years earlier. It was polite, properly formatted, and completely unhelpful. She acknowledged the Council's concerns, thanked them for their interest, and, then, explained that humanity would continue to operate according to their own timeline and procedures. She reminded them that humans had committed to formal diplomatic engagement in 30 more years and requested patience. The galaxy was running out of patience. Something had to give, and everyone feared what would happen when it finally did. The emergency session was called at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Council representatives arrived disheveled and anxious, pulled from sleep by urgent priority alerts. The Grand Chamber filled quickly with worried voices and nervous energy. Something had to be done about humanity, and it had to be done now. Chancellor Mogstar took the podium with an expression of grim determination. His 4 eyes swept across the assembled representatives before he spoke. The translation matrix carried his words to every species in their native language, but the message was clear in all of them. The time for patience had ended. We have waited long enough, Mogstar declared. Humanity has occupied nearly 1,000 star systems. They have ignored every diplomatic protocol. They have refused every attempt at integration into galactic society. This cannot continue. The chamber erupted in agreement. Species who normally disagreed on everything found common ground in their frustration with humanity. A coalition formed quickly, made up of 12 major species who pooled their military resources for a show of force that would finally make humanity understand the seriousness of the situation. Fleet Admiral Kex Thor of the Valantian Supremacy was chosen to lead the operation. He was a veteran of 3 major conflicts and had negotiated peace treaties with 17 different species. If anyone could make humanity see reason, it would be him. He assembled a fleet of 300 warships, an overwhelming display of military power that had never been deployed for a simple diplomatic mission. The target was New Busan, one of humanity's most developed colonies. Intelligence reports indicated it had a population of 12 million humans and served as a major agricultural hub. The planet was thriving, productive, and completely undefended by military vessels. It was perfect for demonstrating the Council's resolve without actually risking violence. The fleet arrived in formation, weapons powered but not armed, shields active but not at combat strength. This was meant to intimidate, not destroy. Kexthor had given strict orders that no shots were to be fired unless humans attacked first. This was about sending a message, not starting a war. What they found was not what they expected. New Busan orbited a yellow star that was remarkably similar to Earth's sun. The planet itself was a patchwork of green farmland, blue oceans, and small cities that gleamed with solar collectors. 3 massive orbital elevators connected the surface to stations in geosynchronous orbit. Hundreds of cargo ships moved between the planet and its 3 moons, carrying goods and supplies in an endless cycle of commerce. There were no military installations. No defense platforms. No weapons arrays or shield generators protecting the planet. The humans had built a paradise and left it completely undefended. Kexthor felt his first twinge of doubt. He pushed it aside and opened a communication channel to the planetary government. The response came from Governor Mayan, who appeared on screen sitting at an outdoor cafe, eating what looked like a sandwich. Behind her, Kexthor could see people walking through a park, children playing, and vendors selling food from colorful stalls. "Can I help you?" Mayan asked, taking another bite of her sandwich. Kexthor drew himself up to his full height, activating the ceremonial lights that indicated formal military protocol. "I am Fleet Admiral Kexthor of the Valantian Supremacy, commanding the Council Enforcement Fleet. I bring an ultimatum from the Galactic Council. Humanity must cease all expansion immediately and send representatives to the Council for formal diplomatic integration. Failure to comply will result in economic sanctions and potential military action." Mayan finished chewing and swallowed. She took a sip of her drink and looked at the camera with an expression of genuine confusion. "We already told you we would meet in 30 more years. We have been keeping our word. Why are you threatening us?" 30 years is unacceptable, Kexthor said, trying to maintain his authoritative tone despite the surreal nature of eating lunch while discussing potential war. "You occupy nearly 1,000 systems. You ignore all diplomatic overtures. You treat the established galactic order as if it does not exist." "We are not ignoring anyone," Mayan replied calmly. "We are just busy. Is your civilization so fragile that you cannot wait 3 decades for a proper introduction? We are literally farming and building cities. We are not attacking anyone. We are not threatening anyone. We are growing food." Kexthor felt his carefully prepared speech crumbling. Nothing in his military training had prepared him for negotiating with someone who seemed genuinely baffled by the concept of urgency. "You do not understand the seriousness of this situation." "No, I think you do not understand our situation," Mayan said, and, for the first time there was an edge to her voice. "Humanity has made mistakes before. We expanded too fast, used resources poorly, and damaged our own home world. We nearly destroyed ourselves through carelessness and greed. We learned from those mistakes. This time, we are doing things properly. We are building infrastructure that will last for thousands of years. We are creating sustainable colonies that can support generations of our children. This requires focus, planning, and time." She stood up, and the camera followed her as she walked to a railing overlooking the city below. "Look at this place. 3 years ago, this was empty land. Now it is home to 3 million people. They have schools and hospitals. They have farms and factories. They have parks where children can play safely. We built all of this while you were sending us angry messages about diplomatic protocols." "Protocols exist for a reason," Kexthor argued. "They prevent misunderstandings and conflicts. Your protocols are causing the conflict," Mayan shot back. You are threatening military action against farmers because they will not stop planting crops to attend your meetings. Does that sound reasonable to you? The question hung in the air between them. Kexthor looked at his command staff, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in their faces. He looked at the fleet displays showing 300 warships in battle formation. He looked at the planet below, peaceful and productive and utterly unafraid. We are not your enemy, Mayan continued, her voice softer now. We are not competing with you or challenging your authority. We are simply trying to build good homes for our people. When that work is done, when our foundation is solid and our people are secure, then we will have time and energy for diplomacy. Until then, we would appreciate being left alone to finish our work. The standoff continued for 3 weeks. The fleet remained in orbit, a constant reminder of the Council's displeasure. Mayan went about her daily routine as if they were not there, attending construction meetings and reviewing agricultural reports. Other human officials did the same, treating the military presence like an inconvenient weather pattern that would eventually pass. Kexthor sent daily reports to the Council, each one more frustrated than the last. The humans were not reacting the way they were supposed to. They showed no fear, no defiance, and no interest in negotiation. They just kept working. On the 20th day, something happened that changed everything. A construction accident at one of the orbital elevators caused a section to collapse, killing 17 workers and injuring 40 more. The human response was immediate and total. Every available resource was diverted to rescue operations. Engineers worked around the clock to stabilize the structure. Medical teams from across the planet rushed to help. Kexthor watched it all on his monitors, and, for the first time, he began to understand. The humans were not ignoring the galaxy out of arrogance or hostility. They genuinely believed that building safe homes and protecting their people was more important than politics. To them, a diplomatic summit was less urgent than fixing a broken elevator that might kill more workers. It was a completely alien way of thinking, and it terrified him. Because if humans really believed that construction was more important than diplomacy, what would they do when someone actually threatened their construction projects? The answer, he suspected, would not be pleasant for anyone involved. Plix was not supposed to be the one who solved the mystery. She was a junior analyst in the Council's Cultural Research Division, barely 3 years out of university, and her job consisted mostly of organizing files and running data checks for senior researchers. Nobody asked her opinion on important matters. Nobody expected her to contribute anything meaningful to the human crisis. But Plix could not stop thinking about it. While her supervisors debated military strategies and political responses, she spent her nights downloading every piece of human media she could find. Music, movies, books, educational programs, news broadcasts. Anything that might help her understand how humans thought. What she discovered was not what she expected. Human entertainment was filled with stories about building things. They made movies about constructing bridges and designing cities. They wrote songs about farming and creating homes. Even their children's shows featured characters who solved problems by working together to build solutions. The pattern was everywhere once she started looking for it. Humans celebrated construction the way other species celebrated military victories or diplomatic triumphs. Their heroes were not always warriors or politicians. Sometimes they were engineers who designed better housing or farmers who developed new crop varieties. She dug deeper, accessing human historical databases that were freely available to anyone who bothered to look. What she found there changed everything she thought she knew about the crisis. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself. Not through war or plague or natural disaster, but through careless expansion. They had spread across their home world too quickly, depleting resources faster than they could be renewed. They had built cities without proper planning, created industries without considering environmental impact, and pushed their population growth beyond what their planet could sustain. The result had been catastrophic. Environmental collapse, resource wars, famine, and social breakdown. Humanity had teetered on the edge of extinction for decades before finally pulling back from the brink. But the scars of that near-death experience ran deep in their culture. Plix Ven found speech after speech from human leaders emphasizing the same themes. Sustainable growth. Long-term planning. Quality over speed. Build it right the first time. Never again would humanity sacrifice the future for short-term gains. She compiled her findings into a report and submitted it through proper channels. Then, she waited, expecting it to be ignored like all her other work. Instead, she was summoned to an emergency meeting of the Senior Research Council. The conference room was filled with people who terrified her. Department heads with decades of experience. Military advisors with combat decorations. Senior diplomats who had negotiated treaties with hundreds of species. And, sitting at the head of the table was Ambassador Veldar himself, looking more exhausted than she had ever seen him. "Tell them what you told me," Veldar said quietly. Plix Ven's hands shook as she activated the presentation display. She had practiced this 100 times, but, now that she was actually doing it, the words felt clumsy and inadequate. Still, she pushed forward. "They are not refusing diplomacy out of malice," she began. "They are following a cultural pattern that developed after their near-extinction event. Humans have always worked in phases. Exploration, settlement, consolidation, and, then, integration. They are not psychologically capable of committing to external relationships until their internal foundation is secure." She showed them human urban development plans. Every colony was designed to support populations 10 times larger than currently live there. Infrastructure was built to last centuries. Food production capacity exceeded consumption by massive margins. Humans were not building for the present. They were building for great-grandchildren who had not been born yet. Their 50-year timeline was not arrogance, Plix Ven explained. It was a genuine project estimate based on the time required to complete their foundational infrastructure. To them, our demand that they stop building to attend diplomatic meetings is like asking a surgeon to pause in the middle of surgery for a social call. The room was silent. Senior researchers who had spent decades studying interspecies relations were seeing their assumptions crumble. Humans were not a military threat. They were not playing political games. They were terrified of making the same mistakes that had nearly killed them, and they were willing to endure any amount of external pressure to avoid those mistakes. "What about their expansion rate?" one of the military advisors asked. "They are taking systems faster than any species in recorded history." Plix Ven had an answer for that too. She displayed population projections and resource calculations. "They are not expanding rapidly. They are building the foundation for slow, sustainable growth that will take centuries to fill. Look at their population distribution. Every colony maintains significant unused capacity. They are creating room to grow into gradually, rather than scrambling to build new colonies when they run out of space." She pulled up an interview with Captain Jamin of the human vessel Persistence. He was a cargo ship captain who had been transporting building materials between colonies for 15 years. When asked why humans built such large infrastructure for relatively small populations, his answer was simple and devastating. "We have made the mistake before of building too fast without proper planning," Jamin said in the interview. "Overpopulation, resource depletion, environmental collapse. We learned our lesson. This time we are doing it right, even if it takes longer. Our grandchildren will thank us for building them homes that last, rather than temporary shelters we threw up in a hurry." The revelation spread through the council like ripples in water. Species who had been calling for military action suddenly found themselves questioning everything. Diplomats who had felt insulted by human refusal to attend meetings began to see things from a different perspective. The humans were not being rude. They were being responsible. Veldar called for an immediate cessation of all military operations. Fleet Admiral Kexthor received orders to withdraw from New Busan and return to Council space. The apology was drafted carefully, acknowledging the misunderstanding and requesting patience while the Council adjusted its approach to human relations. The response from Governor Mayan was gracious and brief. Apology accepted. We appreciate your understanding. We look forward to proper diplomatic relations in 28 years, 4 months, and approximately 11 days, assuming the terraforming projects stay on schedule. The precision of that timeline said everything that needed to be said. Humans knew exactly how long their construction projects would take because they had planned every detail. They were not guessing or stalling. They were working according to a carefully calculated schedule that had no room for diplomatic interruptions. Plixven found herself promoted 3 times in the following months. Her analysis became required reading for anyone dealing with human affairs. She gave lectures at diplomatic academies across the galaxy, explaining the fundamental truth that everyone had missed. Humans were not humanity's greatest mystery. Their straightforward nature was. They said what they meant what they said, and followed through on their promises with machine-like precision. The galaxy had been looking for hidden agendas and secret plans when the truth was written plainly in every public statement humans made. They were busy building homes. They would talk when they were done. It was really that simple, and the simplicity had been the most confusing part of all. Ambassador Veldar stood at the entrance to the Grand Council chamber and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Nervousness. After 30 years of waiting, studying, and trying to understand humanity, the moment had finally arrived. Today, humanity would send its first full diplomatic delegation to formally join the galactic community. The chamber had been prepared for weeks. Every species had sent their finest representatives. Cultural experts had advised on proper greeting protocols. Translation matrices had been updated with the latest human language patterns. The entire galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humanity would finally say after 3 decades of silence. Ambassador Subin entered precisely on time, not a minute early or late. She was followed by a delegation of 20 humans, each one a specialist in different aspects of diplomacy, trade, culture, and technology. They moved with quiet confidence, showing no signs of intimidation despite being surrounded by hundreds of alien species. Veldar had studied everything available about Subin. She had spent the last 30 years learning 43 different galactic languages, studying the history and culture of every council member species, and preparing for this exact moment. When she spoke, it was in flawless council standard, with perfect pronunciation and appropriate formal terminology. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, she began. Humanity thanks you for your patience during our foundational period. We are now ready to engage in formal diplomatic relations and contribute to the greater galactic community. The presentation that followed was unlike anything the Council had seen before. Most new species spent their first appearance making excuses, asking for concessions, or trying to establish dominance. Humanity did none of these things. Instead, they presented detailed proposals for trade agreements that benefited everyone involved. They offered agricultural technology that could increase crop yields by 30%. They shared construction techniques that could reduce building time by half. They proposed cultural exchange programs where young people from different species could learn from each other. Every proposal was backed by data, research, and careful analysis of what each species needed most. But they also established firm boundaries. Human systems were sovereign territory. Expansion would continue at humanity's pace, which meant slow and sustainable rather than fast and reckless. Diplomatic meetings must be scheduled in advance with clear agendas. No species would be allowed to establish military presence in human-controlled space without explicit permission. Chancellor Mockstar listened carefully, his 4 eyes taking in every detail. When Subin finished her presentation, he asked the question everyone wanted answered. Why should we accept these terms? You are newcomers to the galactic stage. What gives you the right to dictate conditions? Subin smiled, and there was no arrogance in it, only quiet certainty. We are not dictating conditions. We are explaining how we operate. You can accept our friendship on these terms, or you can continue without us. Either way, we will keep building, keep farming, and keep creating homes for our children. We would prefer to do so as part of the galactic community, but we will not compromise our principles for that privilege. The silence that followed was deafening. Every species in the chamber understood what they were hearing. Humanity was not asking for permission or approval. They were offering partnership between equals. Take it or leave it. Veldar stood and spoke for the first time. The Kentari accept these terms. We believe humanity will bring valuable perspectives to the Council, and we look forward to learning from your unique approach to civilization building. One by one, other species added their agreement. Some were enthusiastic, others reluctant, but, within an hour, the vote was unanimous. Humanity was officially recognized as a full member of the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. The celebration that followed was carefully managed. Humans had researched each species' cultural practices and made sure to respect them all. They brought food from their colonies to share, simple dishes made with care and attention to quality. They answered questions patiently, explaining their history and their hopes for the future. Plix Ven, now a senior researcher, found herself talking with Dr. Hannah, the same human who had sent that first message 30 years ago. Hannah was older now, with gray hair and smile lines around her eyes, but she still had the same focused intensity Plix Ven remembered from her recordings. Did you ever doubt you would make it here? Plix Ven asked. Hannah considered the question seriously. No. We knew exactly how long it would take to build our foundation. We built it. Now we are here, right on schedule. Why would we doubt that? It was such a human answer. No drama, no suspense, just patient work leading to predictable results. Plix Ven found herself laughing, and Hannah joined her. The months following humanity's formal integration brought changes nobody expected. Other species began studying human construction methods and adopting their long-term planning strategies. The concept of building for future generations rather than immediate needs started spreading through galactic culture. A Vrindian architect visited New Busan and spent 6 months studying human city design. She returned home and revolutionized her entire field, creating buildings that would last millennia instead of centuries. A Drethix military commander took a sabbatical to work on a human farming colony and discovered that growing food was more satisfying than threatening neighbors. He retired from military service and became an agricultural consultant. The phrase, "we will do it on the human timeline," became shorthand for thorough, patient, quality work. Species who had once mocked humanity's refusal to rush now used it as a compliment. Projects that were done right, with proper planning and attention to detail, were said to be built the human way. But humanity itself changed very little. They continued expanding at their steady, sustainable pace. They kept building cities designed to last thousands of years. They maintained their borders and their principles, friendly but firm about what they would and would not compromise on. Captain Day One, who had given that first distracted response to Veldar 30 years ago, was still hauling construction equipment between colonies. When asked how it felt to be part of the species that changed galactic culture, he laughed and said he was too busy to think about it. Governor Mayan expanded New Busan's population to 15 million and began planning infrastructure for 30 million. When reporters asked if she was worried about overbuilding, she just smiled and said her great-grandchildren would appreciate the foresight. Ambassador Subin became a fixture at council meetings, respected for her thorough preparation and her refusal to waste time on political posturing. If an issue needed discussion, she discussed it efficiently and honestly. If a meeting was called without a clear purpose, she politely declined to attend. 50 years after first contact, 150 years after humanity first left Earth, the galaxy looked different. Not because humans had conquered anything or forced change on anyone, but because they had simply shown a different way of doing things. A way that valued patience over speed, quality over quantity, and long-term sustainability over short-term gains. Veldar retired from diplomatic service and wrote a book about his experiences with humanity. The final chapter was titled The Lesson of Patience, and it ended with a simple observation. Humanity had not changed for the galaxy. The galaxy had changed because of humanity. Not through force or manipulation, but through the simple act of staying true to their principles regardless of external pressure. And, somewhere on a farming colony in the Outer Rim, human children played in parks built by their grandparents, grew food in fields planned decades before they were born, and learned the same lessons that had saved their species from extinction. Build it right. Build it to last. Build it for the future. The galaxy watched and learned, and, slowly, carefully, began to understand. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their determination. It was their ability to say no to everything except what mattered most. They had refused all diplomacy until they were ready, and, in doing so, they had taught the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stay focused on building something worth building. The end.